The Tower of Silence. 1. An ear of grain in silence reaped. To work at the top of the landfill, a hierophant had to take a vow of secrecy and devote what was left of their life to its construction and sanctification. The initiate did just that, bringing all their possessions to the gate and venturing to the field of the initiates and giving away all of their things carried away in a landfill compactor. Naked, they climbed the ramps, sliding across decades of trash until at the apex the priests released a stream of fluids from a well tapped far below the layers of waste. The iridescent entheogen of oil, water, garbage fluids, and decay sat placid in the cup and went down their throat with ease. The morning rust fog and plastic bag clouds slid away, showing the towering height at which they stood and sights below of further ziggurats of waste stretching far away, lining alongside the old interstate choked with cars and rusted trucks. Welcome to the house of heaven. 2. The plague years. The hierophant guided the drawn cart, excised from an old Chevy truck bed, toward the burial site. The men bearing the cart hid their faces behind quilts of stained muslin that flapped in the trash wind of the temple. They were silent as the hierophant lifted the sun-faded styrofoam sheets exposing the plasticated figures and said a prayer that was lost in the wind. In the bed lay what were once people. Now what remained of their skin was taut across the angled bright plastic skeletons that shot transparent pink lemniscate orbs and black fragmented enneagrams. "Did you know them?" the hierophant asked. The man nodded in shame, pulling their wide-brimmed hats over their obscured eyes. The figures were light as the hierophant removed them from the makeshift truck bed in a state of prayer and sent their pallbearers on their way. Then lay each abstract form within the wide crater lined with centuries of condensed black plastic trash bags and forgotten things. The hierophant cast their hands into the mudra of their order, then watched the compactor, choking black smoke into the sky of scavengers and airborne plastic, fill the grave back, burying the bodies whose tissues had been fixed in a plague of plastination. 3. Reticent in waste. As the moons faded from the dull sky, another cart was brought before the fresh ground. A compactor smoked in the distance. A man backed up his rusted van, still belching a diesel froth. His face was obscured by rags to cover his sores as he opened the back of the van where the figures of the bodies lay stacked like wood for a fire. Their tight tanned skins pulled across their now acute angles. The hierophant stepped from the foot of the ascending ramp, casting a shadow from the corroded suns. "Did you know them?" they asked the man, who hastily placed each form on the thick mud of the ground. He entered his van and drove away down the ramp and towards the fields of the initiates. The hierophant said a prayer and removed the final skins of the forms, revealing their true form, each an abstract monolith in dramatic angular tableaus. They moved a form and heard a noise. "Hello, you," the hierophant said, gently grabbing the boy hidden beneath the piles. The boy said nothing yet stood up, his body in mid-transformation. His right leg a parametric series of gradating slices in clear plastic, his hand clutched to his chest, wounded and bent in solid black. "Hello," the boy said, his right eye a ball of red matte plastic rolling in his slowly dehydrating skull. 4. 2 moons. At night, the second moon shone bright in the gleaming heavens. Composed of dead satellites and debris, their edges reflected a new moon on its own elliptical orbit through the flat black of the evening sky. The hierophant took some grilled birds from the pyre and gave them to the child, who ate voraciously, picking the avian plastics from his teeth in long strands. An initiate crept up naked, holding a plastic skull cap full of noxious fluid. The hierophant silently handed it to the child, who supped from it until it was gone. "Good boy," they said, watching the boy's torso hold off its transformation for the time. The boy made a shuffling sound in his throat of transformed plastics. In the dusty light of the morning, as the moons faded behind the billowing gaseous clouds of chlorinated fumes, the pilgrims returned bearing their transformed ones. The hierophant awoke and set about carrying their forms from their funerary transports into the new graves. The boy watched from behind his plastic eyes, after the last pilgrims, after the sun dulled to darkness, after the pyres were lit, after the last strange songs were sung. The Hierophant stared at the boy, who lay gasping in the rusted narthex. The boy's legs were angled clear protuberances, sliced parametrically along the axis of his small body. His hardened fluorescent pink face searched blindly in the new darkness, sightless, voiceless. The Hierophant sung a silent song for comfort, but the boy could no longer hear. The gallery. The Exalted stood at the top of the landfill, the diseased winds whipping around them. Below, the compactors built and buried and reconstructed the holy temple. In the contaminated mists, other towers emerged, but none as tall. Along the perimeter of the temple, different large abstract forms stood upright, unburied, glistening bright in the cruel sun. The priests smiled and continued their eternal silent prayer, crossing before a clear form, smaller than most of the others, with two floating red orbs that followed the Exalted unblinking. For the rest of their days,